Coffee is the second most traded commodity on the planet after oil. 2 billion cups consumed every day, an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And most of the coffee Americans drink is, by any honest measure, bad. Not bad because of personal preference. Bad because of how it's sourced, how it's roasted, how it's packaged, and how long it sits on a shelf before it reaches your cup. Decisions made to maximize margin at every step of the process, with flavor as an afterthought and transparency as an obstacle. Let's start with 5 of the worst coffee brands. Worst number 5. Folgers. Classic roast. Folgers is the best-selling coffee in America. Has been for decades. The best part of waking up is one of the most effective advertising slogans in food and beverage history. So effective that it became a cultural touchstone completely independent of whether the coffee in the can justified the sentiment. It doesn't. The sourcing problem? Folgers Classic Roast is made from Robusta beans, the lower quality, higher caffeine, higher bitterness species the commodity coffee traders use when the goal is volume and price, not flavor. Arabica beans, the species that specialty coffee uses almost exclusively, have twice the flavor complexity, lower bitterness, and higher natural acidity that gives coffee its brightness. Robusta is cheaper. It yields more per plant. It's more resistant to disease. It produces coffee that tastes like what it is, a commodity product optimized for cost, not for the cup. Folgers doesn't declare its bean sourcing prominently because Robusta blend is not a marketing asset. Worst number 4. Maxwell House. Original roast. Maxwell House has a claim to historical legitimacy. The brand dates to 1892, and the famous slogan is attributed to Theodore Roosevelt tasting the coffee and making the observation that became the tagline. Whether Roosevelt said it is disputed. Whether the current product deserves the compliment is not. Maxwell House uses commodity Robusta forward blends, pre-grinds before packaging, prints best-by dates instead of roast dates, and makes no meaningful declarations about sourcing, origin, or farming practices. What separates Maxwell House from Folgers at the bottom of this list is one additional problem that's specific to the brand. Artificial flavoring in several of its product lines that isn't disclosed prominently. The flavoring issue, Maxwell House Master Blend and several flavored varieties in the Maxwell House line contain natural and artificial flavors listed in the ingredients section. In unflavored coffee, natural flavors should not appear. Coffee is a single ingredient product. When artificial flavors appear in a coffee that isn't marketed as flavored, it indicates the base coffee lacks sufficient flavor on its own and requires supplementation. A coffee that needs artificial flavor to taste like coffee is not, in any meaningful sense, good coffee. Worst number 3. Starbucks grocery store, coffee. Starbucks in its cafes is a separate conversation. The quality varies by location, the sourcing has improved significantly over the years, and the in-store experience is at least partially what you're paying for. Starbucks grocery store coffee is a different product with different problems. The dark roast disguise. Starbucks built its brand identity on dark roast, the French roast, the espresso roast, the Pike Place roast that defined what American consumers associated with serious coffee for 2 decades. Dark roast is, in significant part, a quality concealment strategy. When you roast coffee to a very dark level, the roast flavor, carbon smoke bitterness, dominates and masks the underlying flavor of the bean. A mediocre Robusta forward blend and an exceptional single-origin Arabica taste more similar at a very dark roast than at a medium roast where the bean's character can express itself. Dark roast commoditizes flavor. It's the coffee equivalent of adding excessive spice to mediocre meat. The spice is what you taste, not the protein. The premium pricing on commodity sourcing. Starbucks grocery store coffee costs significantly more than Folgers or Maxwell House. The price premium implies better sourcing. The reality is more complicated. While Starbucks has ethical sourcing programs, CAFE practices, and relationships with specific cooperatives, the grocery store blends are not made from the same sourcing tier as the reserve products or the single-origin offerings in stores. The grocery channel receives commodity-grade blends that the dark roast makes palatable and the Starbucks brand makes defensible at premium pricing. Worst number 2. Dunkin'. Original blend ground coffee. America runs on Dunkin' is a slogan that works because it's honest about what Dunkin' is, fuel. A caffeine delivery mechanism optimized for speed, accessibility, and price. Nobody goes to Dunkin' for a nuanced coffee experience. They go because it's there, and it's fast, and it works. The grocery store product tries to extend that brand into a context where the speed and accessibility advantages don't exist. And what's left is a mediocre product in a competitive retail environment. The blend opacity. Dunkin'. Original Blend doesn't declare its bean composition, its origin countries, or its Arabica to Robusta ratio. The label says 100% premium Arabica coffee, a claim that dozens of commodity brands make because Arabica is a species designation broad enough to include coffee ranging from exceptional single-origin lots to commodity-grade mass-market beans harvested at industrial scale. 100% Arabica means something in specialty coffee. In mass-market grocery store coffee, it means the marketing department knows that Arabica sounds better than Robusta and that no one is going to audit the claim. The medium roast problem specific to Dunkin'. Dunkin'. Original Blend is marketed as medium roast. At medium roast levels, the quality of the underlying bean matters more than at dark roast. The roast doesn't provide enough flavor coverage to mask mediocre sourcing. The result is a coffee that has the flatness and one-dimensionality of commodity Arabica at a roast level where that flatness has nowhere to hide. Worst number 1, Keurig K-Cups. K-Cups are the number 1 on the worst list, not because any single variety is dramatically worse than the others, but because the format itself is a systematic elimination of every quality variable that makes coffee good. The freshness impossibility. A K-Cup contains pre-ground coffee sealed in a plastic pod. The ratio of surface area to coffee volume in a K-Cup maximizes the exposure of ground coffee to the oxygen trapped inside the pod. The small amount of nitrogen flushed into the pod during sealing retards oxidation, but doesn't eliminate it. By the time a K-Cup is purchased, brewed, and consumed, accounting for production, shipping, warehouse time, and retail shelf time, the coffee inside is stale by any specialty standard. The format makes fresh coffee structurally impossible at scale. K-Cups cost approximately 35 cents to 75 cents per pod, producing 6 to 8 ounces of coffee. That translates to $70 to $100 per pound of coffee equivalent, compared to $15 to $25 per pound for quality whole bean coffee that produces better results. You are paying 3 to 5 times more per cup for coffee that is staler, extracted at the wrong temperature, and produced in a format whose inventor publicly regrets its existence. And now here are the 5 best coffee brands. Best number 5. Lavazza Super Crema Whole Bean. Lavazza has been blending coffee in Turin, Italy since 1895. It's one of the largest coffee companies in the world. And unlike most large coffee companies, scale hasn't destroyed the product. Super Crema is the reason. The blend philosophy that works. Super Crema is a blend of Arabica and Robusta, but the Robusta is used intentionally and skillfully, the way a winemaker uses a specific grape variety to achieve a structural goal, rather than to cut costs. The Robusta in Super Crema provides crema, the golden foam that sits on top of a properly pulled espresso, and body that pure Arabica blends sometimes lack. The Arabica provides the aromatic complexity and sweetness. Used in proportion, the result is greater than either species alone. This is the difference between Robusta as a cost-cutting measure and Robusta as an ingredient with a purpose. Lavazza uses it the second way. The consistency across decades. Lavazza Super Crema has been produced to essentially the same specification for over 50 years. The roast profile, the blend ratio, the target flavor have been maintained through ownership changes, market expansions, and cost pressures that would have prompted reformulation at most companies. That consistency is evidence of institutional commitment to a product standard that the market has validated repeatedly. Best number 4, Peet's Coffee. Major Dickinson's Blend. Alfred Peet opened his first coffee shop in Berkeley, California in 1966 and taught the founders of Starbucks, who were his customers, what serious coffee sourcing and roasting looked like. Starbucks went in a different direction. Peet's didn't. The sourcing transparency. Peet's publishes sourcing information that most grocery store coffee brands don't. Origin countries, farming relationships, quality tier designations. The Major Dickinson's Blend, Peet's signature offering, named after a customer who developed the recipe with Alfred Peet himself, is a blend of East African and Indonesian Arabica coffees at a dark but not burned roast that achieves what Starbucks dark roasts attempt and fall short of. The roast date difference, Peet's prints roast dates on its bags. Not best by dates, roast dates. That single practice separates Peet's from Folgers, Maxwell House, Dunkin', and most of the grocery store coffee market in terms of transparency commitment. When you know when your coffee was roasted, you can make informed decisions about freshness. When you only know the best buy date, you cannot. Best number 3, Intelligentsia Black Cat Espresso. Whole bean. Intelligentsia was founded in Chicago in 1995 and became one of the defining voices of what the coffee industry calls the third wave, the movement that applied the sourcing and terroir language of wine to coffee and asked why the farmer who grew the beans was invisible in the transaction. Black Cat Espresso is their flagship blend and one of the most consistently excellent coffees available at retail. The direct trade model. Intelligentsia pioneered what it called direct trade, relationships with specific farms and cooperatives, negotiated at prices above fair trade minimums, with transparency about what the farmer received and what the quality standards were. Direct trade isn't a certification with universal standards. Each company that uses the term defines it internally. But Intelligentsia's program has been independently documented, and its relationships with specific producers in Ethiopia, Colombia, and Guatemala have been maintained for years, with published details about the farms and the prices paid. That's a level of sourcing transparency that commodity brands structurally cannot provide, because their supply chains aggregate from too many sources to trace. Best number 2. Counterculture Coffee. Counterculture Coffee was founded in Durham, North Carolina in 1995 and has spent 30 years building supply chain relationships that most coffee companies treat as marketing copy rather than operational reality. The Transparency Report. Counterculture publishes an annual transparency report, a detailed document listing every origin they source from, the price paid per pound, how that price compares to commodity market prices, and the specific quality metrics that determine selection. No other coffee brand on a grocery store shelf produces a document this detailed about what's actually in the bag. The Transparency Report exists because counterculture believes the consumer deserves to know what they're buying and because the sourcing can withstand scrutiny. That combination, believing the information should be public and having product that survives public examination, is rarer than it should be. The training infrastructure. Counterculture operates training centers in multiple cities where baristas, consumers, and wholesale buyers can learn about brewing, sourcing, and the variables that affect cup quality. That educational investment reflects a company that believes informed consumers make better choices, and that better choices support better coffee throughout the supply chain. If this changes how you'll look at that aisle next time, like the video and subscribe to Prove My Dad Wrong. And drop a comment. Which brand were you buying? See you next one.